Hey, welcome to Simply the Truth with me, Doug Harris. Thank you for joining us, because you are as important as those of us here in the studio. Even though my guest, my colleague, whatever you call him, in the studio today is my old mate JT.
Hiya, Doug. It's really good to be here again.
It's good to have you with me. One of the things I know about JT is he stirs you guys up, and so that's really good. And yeah, do we agree with everything he says? No, we don't. But does he make us get back into the scriptures? Yes, he certainly does. And so glad to be discussing, and we're going to be looking at a subject very, very close to my heart today. We're going to begin basically probably what will be a new series. We never quite know when we start something like this how long it's going to take to get to the end. But we're looking at the whole area of defending the faith. Defending the faith, and we'll be looking specifically at some of the passages in Acts today to do that. But JT, I hear next year you're going to become an international film star.
This is indeed true. I've had quite a bit to do with Koreans this summer. They've been coming to South Wales. People might not be aware that the Christian faith was taken to Korea by a Welshman. We get everywhere.
Seriously, that's true. Absolutely true, really.
And so the Koreans feel, of course, Korea is the two largest churches in the world are in Seoul in Korea. So they feel that they want to come back to Wales to help us. So they've been doing a lot of praying, open air meetings, particularly in South Wales. So I've had a lot to do with them. I've helped them to appreciate some of the ancient Christian sites and Celtic Christianity and whatever. So anyway, they filmed me talking about these things, and apparently I didn't know this. I thought it'd be just a little film in a back room of a church or something, but it's going to be all over the Korean cinemas next year. So
you won't be able to go to Korea, will you? That'd be mobbed
on the streets.
Yeah.
That's absolutely right.
You might even get mobbed in Swansea after this program. But I mean that's great, and just chatting with me you're quite a historian, aren't you? I mean, you looked into quite a number of these areas.
Oh yeah. I am a passionate lover of history, and I have been all my life. Like as a younger guy, I was big into military history, even though I'm a pacifist. But obviously, as I've got older, Christian history and its interface with the rest of history as well is something which has fascinated me. And I think it's very important to understand history so we don't repeat the same mistakes, or we understand better where people are coming from today. Mm-hmm. The Middle East, the Balkan conflict, all help if we understand the background and what's been going on,
Yeah. That's great. Maybe we'll talk about this one of these days, along with your greatest passion as well, of ants.
Ants.
I keep saying one of these days we're going to do a program on ants, and nobody believes me.
It'll be the fulfillment of my life,
well,
Douglas.
By the time we spent 3 years on apologetics, the rapture may have come and we may not have time for ants. But
if you believe in that sort of thing, of course. Now there's another program.
I knew you were going to say that. But JT, I mean, last time you were here, we summarised. We'd done several programs on the gospel.
Yes, yeah.
And we summarised it last time, and basically our response to what the gospel is. Now, you really have some, as you do on most things, have some specific views on how we should communicate or this. Tell us a little bit about this as we get into defending the faith, this whole area, because defending the faith is apologetics, is communication.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
Fill us in a little bit as you go through that.
In many Christian circles, there is I suppose you could call it a love affair with preaching. And that usually means a 45-minute monologue, sometimes inspiring and exciting, sometimes very illuminating and helpful, often boring, and usually 6 foot above contradiction. Now,
You were at our church on Sunday morning.
If you can find that in the Bible, I really would like someone to show that to me, because it's not. And when it comes to communicating the gospel into a secular, pagan, or other religious type society, you don't find that in the Bible. And in terms of communicating the Christian faith to Christians, give you a quick example of this. Do you know in Acts 20 there's that story in Troas, which is now in Turkey, where Paul arrived and Eutychus was the chap sitting on the top floor. Now, in most translations it says Paul preached on and on. You know, and you can almost imagine people just dropping off like this, and off he went off the balcony, thump, you know. The word is not the word for preach. It's the word which we recognise. When I say the Greek word, people will recognise what the word conjures up. Dialegomai. It's to dialogue. So there was point, question, response, another question. And firstly, Christian education should be much more dialogue than it is monologue. And when it comes to communicating the gospel out there, well, when we come to read in the book of Acts, for instance, how it took place, say, in Athens, if you look in Acts 19 or Ephesus, the same word comes up. The same word comes up. Dialegomai. So when Paul, we'll look at it a bit later on today, I would think, when Paul was in Athens, he didn't stand up and preach to everybody in the marketplace. It says that he dialogued with them. So once again, he would make a point, they would come back. And in fact, if you read Acts 17 carefully, you see this interplay where they say, this man's a nutcase. You know, and then he comes back with a response. We're going to take him to the big guys. And they take him up to the Areopagus, Mars Hill, and he does the same thing there. And once again, there's a bit of interflow. So my appeal is that there should be more dialogue in our gospel communication.
Do you think you can do that? I mean, just bringing it down to congregations today, and you mentioned just a little while in the introduction when we were talking about Korea, they have the largest churches. Now, in big churches, dialogue is very, very difficult. Now, does that mean we shouldn't have big churches, or does it mean we should find ways of doing that dialogue? Because there gets to a place where the size prohibits that, surely. You
know what this is now, Doug, don't you? It's a can of worms. And you were just opened it.
I know, yes, I know, I knew I would. I knew I would, but come on.
Because, of course, we want big churches. We want millions of people in churches. But should they all be sitting together in enormous auditoriums with 12,000 people listening? I don't think so. No. And we can have special celebrations like that. But I think that, you know, let's really cut to the chase on this. My understanding of the New Testament and churches coming together is not. If I asked the viewers, imagine we could have the replies, you know, down the line now. What you go to church for, what you're involved in church for, people will say to worship God. You find it in the Bible. What we come together to do is to encourage each other. When you come together, encourage each other, or the specific thing which is mentioned that we come to do. This is, you know, the can of worms.
When have you ever done anything else on my programs, JT?
They gather together on the first day of the week to break bread.
Yes.
You can't do that with 10,000 people.
No.
So what I'm saying is, once you change the setting, well, of course, dialogue becomes much more difficult, nay, impossible. But should the setting be changed, the normal experience of Christians should be in a setting where there can be this dialogue, this conversation, this participation. When you come together, each one must listen to the sermon. No, sorry, that's the wrong version I'm reading from. If I read the original Bible, it actually says when you come together, each one has. And you come with a scripture, a reading, a prophecy, a tongue, a word of encouragement, etc. And of course there'll be a teaching in there, perhaps 2 or 3. But I think we we sanctify our history as honoured and as good as it can be with too much importance.
But having said that, and this I happen to agree with you very much. I actually feel in large meetings I feel out of place. It's always been for me, and there's I just do not like the massive meetings. I'm sure they have their place, as you've said, for for celebration and that. I much prefer the smaller meeting, and the fellowship I'm part of is fairly small, and it's very interesting. What's happened and what's developed is that when I'm there, I will often chair, for half an hour or so on a Sunday morning, but nearly always afterwards, people start commenting or asking questions, and we always have before that an open time of worship where each one can bring what they have. And I happen to feel they were right. And that to me is good. But when you go back, my whole point is this, when you go back to the Spurgeons, when you go back to the Whitfields, when you go back to these people, it doesn't appear that was... It appears that they did preach without the dialogue. Do you think there is a place for that? I mean, how do you fit that in here?
Yeah. Just because something works at one level doesn't necessarily mean that it is or should be the normal experience of all Christians. I'll give you an example. I went along a few years ago to the Hillsong Church in London, had a great time. There were about 5,000 people in the theatre. It was one of the few situations. I work with young people, but in this congregation, they were in their 20s and 30s mainly. I felt old. I felt old. I was in my 40s, I'm 53 now. I know I look a lot younger. I know.
I never said that, JT.
Yeah, well, people out there are saying, "Oh, John, you look so much younger." Anyway, but I'm not going to insult the Hillsong people and say it's not church, but it isn't what you get there. It's something else. If they meet in smaller groups, 15 people, 20 people, now that's much more church. And you can look at Spurgeon and fantastic sermons, but how many you have to think, okay, that's wonderful, but it's a bit like taking the exceptional and making it ordinary and making it regular. When I think if one person has the bulk of the ministry opportunity in the church, you rob people.
Yes.
Because we're all priests. And I thought we got rid of priests in the Reformation.
Yeah. Well, we may well have done, but I'm not sure that's all worked through everybody's heard. I'm not sure everybody's heard that yet, JT. Okay, so it can be different, and I guess the other answer to that is that we're not all Spurgeons, and so we can't.
Indeed.
We're not all Wesleys or
Whitfields or whatever. Wesley's preaching was outside.
Yes.
Where Wesley's strength was in the small groups. So I would think that's a bit different.
Yes.
All right, Wesley did preach, and I don't know a huge amount about Wesley, but I know that he had a lot of hecklers. You could say it was dialogue.
Yes, you're probably right there. I mean, I know we used to spend a number of holidays down in Port Isaac in Cornwall. I mean, it's actually a historical fact. I mean, that he went to Port Isaac and he actually preached standing next to his horse,
right,
so that he could get out of there. And anybody that knows Port Isaac, there's only basically
one road in.
One road in, one road. They both come down to the harbour, so you had to run for your life to get out from there. But okay, but coming back to this, and irrespective of that, and some people out there will be saying, well, we shouldn't do it, we should do it like that.
Yeah.
But let's begin to unpack this whole idea of dialogue, because the fact of the matter is, whether we want to accept what you've just said or not, this whole word dialogue is found within Scripture.
Oh, yes.
It is found here. And therefore we've got to come to terms with what was it in the book of Acts, and has it passed away? Should it be for today? How should it be worked out? So can we start unpacking some of that, of where we find this whole dialogue in the book of Acts?
Yeah, well, I pointed out one of the one of the places, there's a great part of Acts which takes you through the Ephesus, into the Ephesus story, and prior to that, it's Paul in Athens, okay? So if just look briefly at Acts 17 for a minute. It says, verse 16 of chapter 17, I'm reading from the New Century Version, which is my favourite translation.
Okay. I won't argue at this point.
While Paul was waiting for Silas and Timothy in Athens, he was troubled because he saw that the city was full of idols. In the synagogue, he talked with the Jews and the Greeks who worship God. He also talked every day with people in the marketplace. Now, New Century Version, just like probably your translation, either would say talked with or preached or whatever, but the actual word is to dialogue. And it often, it's like the word.
Can I say, mine actually says reasoned in the synagogue, so I think that's getting a little bit, isn't it?
Get a bit closer to it, And you've got this interesting, verse 18, some of the Epicurean and Stoic philosophers argued with him, saying, this man doesn't know what he's talking about. Now, it's not saying that they disagreed with him, they argued with him. So there was, you can't avoid it. There is this, hey, what are you saying? And here was Paul, not trying just to proclaim and run, but he was engaging with them, and the rest, we'll come on to the chapter a bit later, but the whole rest of the chapter shows that not only did he understand Christian truth, he understood where they were coming from.
Yes.
He'd been very observant. He understood, what they believed, because there were different schools, Epicureans and Stoics. Just for the benefit of people who might not know, Epicureans were, hey, let's have a great time, this life is all there is, and when we die we're gone, basically. That's a very detailed academic look at the Epicureans. And then the Stoics were a bit like pantheists, I suppose. They believed more in the soul, but not that the soul would live on, but would eventually merge into God.
Yes.
But they were much more hard-faced and disciplined, and they lived quite a stoic life. That's where the word comes from.
That's right?
So they were two completely different philosophies. They were both disagreeing with Paul, and he was engaging with them not out of ignorance, because just chuck in. Do you remember a little while ago there was that storm about Christians burning Bibles? Do you remember that?
Burning Bibles?
Qurans.
Burning Qurans. Oh, yeah, I do remember that, yes.
And when that was all happening, I was thinking to myself, no. They should be encouraging Christians to buy Qurans, to read them, so that we are then able, in dialogue and discussion with Muslims, to show them how the Quran actually undermines what Muslims say today, or to show how it doesn't match with what the Bible says. Far from burning Qurans, we should be buying Qurans. And because if we speak out of ignorance, we speak into thin air. And Paul, in this dialogue, in the marketplace, in the synagogue, and in the philosophical centre, if you like, Mars Hill, the Areopagus, at each stage of the game, understood exactly where they were coming from.
So what you're basically saying is, to do what Paul did here, you have to understand your opposition.
Most definitely.
You cannot, you can put your side of the argument, you can put that, but unless you understand where those against you are coming from, you can never deal with that argument. You can never in any way give reason for it, can you?
It's offensive.
Yes.
If you presume to be able to speak to someone, effectively to say that what they believe, what they adhere to, what they've given their life for, the structure of their family is going back, generation upon generation, is wrong, and you're doing it out of ignorance, and they know that you don't understand where they're coming from, it's offensive.
Yeah.
Now, you can do that through study, but the most common way, because not everybody is a student in that sense and will academically study these things, but that sort of understanding can also come out of relationship. Now, there's another point, okay? If we just turn on a page or two, in Acts chapter 19 and 20, it's the whole Ephesus thing, okay? Now, some Christians listening, viewing, may be familiar with the story. Bit of a riot. the Christian influence in the city had caused the purchase of Lucky Charms to go down. Basically, the Lucky Charm manufacturers were getting a bit, agitated about this. They whipped up the crowd. 20,000 people rushed into the stadium shouting, "Great is Artemis! Great is Artemis!" who was the goddess, right?
Of Lucky Charms.
Of Lucky Charms.
Yeah,
it was they were the models of her.
Yes.
Okay, and people who have ever been to Kusadasi will know the theatre. Anyway, so Paul was blamed for this naturally because he brought the message. He was yanked up, but something amazing happens. Right? It says, verse 28. They became very angry. They shouted, "Artemis, the goddess of Ephesus, is great." The whole city became confused. The people grabbed Gaius and Aristarchus, who were from Macedonia and were travelling with Paul, and ran to the theatre. Can you imagine this huge crowd of people whipped up into a frenzy because of the Christian message? Paul wanted to go in and talk to the crowd, but the disciples did not let him. Also, it says here, some leaders of Asia who were friends of Paul sent him a message begging him not to go into the theatre. Okay? Now, that's really interesting. These leaders of Asia, as it says in this translation, were Asiarchs. And in most provinces of the empire, you had a group of people who were entrusted with promoting Roman values, Roman loyalty, and specifically worship and adoration of the emperor. That was their job. So it says, the key thing here, who were friends of Paul. Whoa! Paul in Ephesus, preaching the Christian message, he is able not only to vigorously refute people in public debate, which is what it says earlier on, he not only causes there to be an economic upheaval because people no longer are buying into the whole, Ephesus cult, Artemis cult thing. In the middle of all of that, while preaching Jesus is the only Lord of all, he is friends with people who promote emperor worship. That's what I call following in the footsteps of Jesus. He had built enough relationship with these people so that they would actually defend him in a situation like that. The point I'm saying is that in our communication of the gospel, it isn't a case of point. It's a case of God gave us 2 ears, one mouth, good ratio. Listen, then speak. Build relationship with people so you can understand where they're coming from. And you may be very surprised at the dividends, just like Paul had.
Now, Paul was Paul. I don't know how else to put it.
He wasn't Fred, was he?
No, he wasn't Fred. He'd studied the Old Testament scriptures, which of course all that was around him all his life. He was brought up with them. He became a Christian. He went out for many months into the wilderness and got before God and learned some more. So he had a very good handle on what he could say and how he could say it.
Right, okay.
Now, when we start talking about dialogue today, and when we start bringing it down to us, isn't there a potential danger that some people try and do this and actually get out of their depth?
Yeah.
How can we... Well, number one, I suppose there's 2 points to that. Number one, is it for all people?
Yeah.
And if it is, how can all people get ready for this?
Okay. Well, yes, of course it's for all people, because the call to communicate the gospel is for all of us, all right? But you can easily get out of your depth. I'll give 2 examples from my life. When I was a young man, I was an eager Christian, shall we say. And
I can imagine
yes, indeed. And I liked dance then as well. But anyway, I remember getting involved. I started work, I was 16, and but somehow I got involved with this Mormon. And this guy was in his 50s, very experienced Mormon, and there was me, 16. And he was just clever, right? Clever. And I think to myself, how could you possibly fall for the Mormon story? It just doesn't,
Work, yeah.
But I was only 16. A good Christian, but only 16. And I knew I was out of my depth. I knew I was, but I found it very hard to get out of. There was no danger in me becoming a Mormon, but I wasn't being effective in that situation. So I didn't pursue it, if you know what I mean. And I think we need to know our level with different people. So, for instance, another one was, I was 19, 20 perhaps. I went to the local, some people know about the Moonies, are much quieter now, but I went to see the local boss in the Mooney house in Swansea, all right? And I went with my Bible, as I always did. I remember it well. And I thought, well, I've talked to the other Moonies, I'll talk to the main man, all right? Now, it wasn't his eloquence, it wasn't his ability with the divine principle or the Bible, but there was something about it, and I realised I'm not used to this. And I began to fall asleep. It was very serious, because I was aware that something was going on, whether it was hypnotism or demonic stuff, but I knew I shouldn't be here. So I manoeuvred the situation that I declared truth, and I then left. I was out of my depth. I wasn't experienced in that whole field. And so what I'm saying is, yeah, you will know if someone, you know, if you're building a proper relationship with someone, but if you know that you're mismatched, you know, it's no shame to step back and perhaps allow another Christian.
So we must be aware that each one of us will have our limitations, whatever they be, and whether those limitations are because of age in the Lord, not whatever age we are naturally, but the number of years we've been saved, whether it's been because of the Bible teaching we've had or not had, each one of us will have our limitations, and it's vitally important that we don't go beyond those limitations.
Yes.
But up to those limitations, whatever they be, for each one of us, you're saying, as Christians, we should learn to dialogue.
Absolutely, and build relationships, which is part of that. So,
sorry, when you say build relationships with non-Christians, with people, whether they be atheists or cult members or
your
whatever
Muslim
they may
next door
be.
neighbour.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, the guy you work with who's a Mormon.
Yeah.
The atheist who, whatever. The thing is as well, it's to quote that famous biblical phrase, horses for courses. Is it in the Bible?
It comes in Hezekiah.
It's in the Hebrew.
It?
Yeah,
Is it
Hezekiah.
Yeah.
6 verse 5.
Yeah, that's
people can look it up. Right?
Yeah.
Hezekiah 6 verse 5. We're different. We're all different.
Yes.
And for me, I will enjoy looking forward to having a discussion, say, with the Quran and with the Bible and whatever, but still have the friendship, with the person. Other people, and I know people who are better than this, much better than I am at this, will be able to build a rapport and a friendship, and will be able to say, look, I'm not going to have the arguments. Jesus is my Lord. Whoever is yours, okay? Let's go and have a curry. But perhaps they do realise that what they're doing is demonstrating with lifestyle that Christians are not going to attack them, beat them up, tell them they're stupid, make them feel small, shout at them, preach at them, treat them as if they're just conversion fodder. So, it's more than just doing the detailed biblical things. So, at whatever level we come in at, dialoguing, even if it's purely at the level of being a witness.